So you've got a hole in your drywall. Maybe, I don't know, someone tripped and put their elbow through it, or maybe a piece of furniture hit it, something like that happened. Either way, you've got to get it fixed and taken care of. It really only takes a few basic tools that you may already have or you may not. There's not a lot of money, tied up in these tools, so it's not a huge expense and you can be getting those things patched and taken care of. We'll talk about those real quick. We'll start over here with the basic drywall mud tools. These are mud knives or drywall knives. This is a 6-inch one, but they move progressively up in size because as you add additional coats, you want to go increase in size so that you've got a larger spread coverage area. With the sanding between each coats, that allows you to really blend it over a larger area. This right here is designed for scooping the mud out of the bucket. It's got a rounded edge to it, so it can really contour itself to the edge of the bucket and really help you get the most drywall mud out of there. It's frustrating to do it with a square cut knife, so these are great as well. Today we're going to be using some standard drywall screws. These are maybe a little bit longer than we need for what we're doing here, but better too long than too short. They're a standard thread. We're also going to be using these clips to hold some panels in place in one of the 3 methods we're going to demonstrate, and I'll show that more clearly when we do that. These clips require the use of fine thread drywall screws like these. You can't use the rough thread or the standard or coarse thread. You've got to use the fine thread for those clips. We've also got what's called a hawk, which is basically just a platform with a handle and a pad for extended holding. You're going to put your drywall mud on this and use it with your drywall knives in conjunction to get the mud on the wall. You could also use one of the long troughs or buckets that they use as well. So you'd be good to be able to have a place to hold the mud when you're not throwing it on the wall currently. Today we're going to use a drywall keyhole saw like this one. I realize I'm going fast already, sorry guys. We've got 2 different types of sanders here. The yellow handled sander here uses a replacement screen. Simply by loosening these wing nuts, you can put new screens in it. It's got a coarser screen on it. You may use a finer screen for most of the patching and sanding we're talking about today. But also a sanding block such as this might work just fine as well. This one has a rougher surface on one side and a finer surface on the other for finish sanding before paint. And these work well too. The thing about these is because they're mounted on a sponge, they'll follow the contours of your mud. So if you applied the mud kind of lumpy, and this will only smooth that, that lump over, but the lumpiness can still be present. So a sander like this will take some of those lumps off because it insists on sanding flat. I've got a normal razor knife. These actually have a drywall blade in them. It's a normal razor blade, but it's made for drywall. I think the coating they put on it helps it last a little longer, and in my experience, it's been a great blade. Then we've got some patches. Now these drywall patches are readily available. They come in different sizes. The biggest I've seen is a 12 by 12. I don't use them any larger than the 8 by 8 because the center of them will get a little whoopy. The one we're going to be using today is actually probably this 6 by 6 one, so I'll take it out real quick and take a look at it. There's different manufacturers of these, and they're not cheap. They're $3 or $4 each, but they definitely save you a lot of time and trouble. It'll be the first method we use to cover a hole, so it'll make more sense then. It's got a light adhesive on the back, so it'll stick in place, and then you literally just spread the drywall mud compound right over the top of it, and it'll save you some steps from the other 2 methods I'll also show you. I've got a couple of small pieces of drywall for the 2 sections that require them, and then I've got an impact gun for setting the screws. You could probably do the screws by hand if you're patient, but a screw gun will make it a lot easier. You just want to make sure your screws don't punch all the way through the face paper. They should just dimple it slightly so it can be filled with drywall mud. Now, once you've got your tools assembled, we'll talk about the drywall mud itself in a minute, which you're also going to need, but you're ready to address the issue of your holes. So let's move over here and get that taken care of. Ah! Okay, there's one hole. I don't know how that happened. Maybe the party got crazy. Maybe some psycho is running in and smashing stuff with a hammer. Maybe the second one is just like, oh, I'm trying to hammer this nail in. Oh no, and there's another one. Maybe, you were just trying to, I don't know, tap something in and got a little crazy with the claw. Who knows what happened exactly? All I know is that now you've got these 3 holes, and it just so happens there's 3 common techniques for repairing those holes. So let's look at those real quick. The first technique I'm going to show you involves taking, you got to look at your hole. Well, we'll use a bigger piece for that one. You've got to look at your hole and determine how big your replacement piece needs to be. Maybe because you want the piece to be fully covered. So we're going to look at that. That looks about right. We're going to use these attachment clips that once we have our hole cut, they slide onto the existing drywall. We're going to cut a hole that's going to match this, and then your drywall repair piece goes over the top of them. They screw in place. You put some tape in place and mud, and you're ready to go. The way to do that is to get yourself a Sharpie or a pen or a pencil, hold it up over your hole so it fully covers it, like so. Trace around the hole. This is the area we're going to cut out so that this piece of drywall fits snug. Now, once that's out, you'll need your keyhole saw. And with the keyhole saw, you're just going to cut the hole out. Obviously, you want to be careful of electrical wires that might be in there. So pay attention to where switches and outlets are. And if the hole is big enough that you can see, you can usually kind of take a look in there and make sure as well. This has an isolating handle, but there's still always a chance you'll get shocked. So be careful, and if you do hit something, whether it's a stud or something else, make sure you take your time to make sure you know what it is. Okay? Okay, now this top one can be taken care of with the knife by just dragging the knife across. It'll be the cleanest edge of the whole thing. And then we're good. Look, if I hadn't been careful, I might have caught that. But it looks like we're good there. Now, these clips simply slide onto the drywall panels like so. Well, let me test fit it first. Sometimes I get a little too tight with the patch holes, so let's make sure it's going to fit. Looks good. If this had been much longer, I might have used 2 clips. And actually, we could probably get 2 clips and 2 clips and be done with it. But it's however you feel like doing it. Now, before I screw them in, I'm going to check the panel one more time. It might take a little bit of love to get it in, but that's okay. Just making sure it fits. There it is. Should be good. Kind of get them in there flat. Get our fine head screws and put a screw on the outside of each one. Now I am setting that screw so it's just dimpled in, but not punched all the way through. If it punches all the way through, it might not be a bad idea to put an additional screw in there. You know what I don't have over here with me is some mesh tape. It's in a pocket of that toolbox right there, if someone feels spunky. Now, we put this in place. Oh, there it is. I'm going to set a screw in to hold it in place. Same thing, we want a real light dimple, but not punching through the paper. Now at this point, these tabs simply break off. You just move them back and forth. Once those are off, kind of want to check the perimeter and make sure it's pretty flat, really, because it'll try and bump up your mud. We're going to use a standard fiberglass mesh tape for this. They make some that are kind of ultra thin is what they're called, and those are even better really for this sort of application. But you're just going to put the tape in place and cut it to fit. Well, that got a little crazy, didn't it? These tapes have a slide adhesive to the back of them that'll hold them in place while they're being mudded. What this tape does is it creates strength in that gap to resist cracking. If all you have is paper tape, you can use paper tape as well, but with paper tape you'd need to put a coat of drywall mud on that gap first to hold the paper tape in place and then smooth over the top of it. This will give you a better finish, and besides being easier to work with, it'll give you a better finish. So if all I had was paper tape, I would wait till I had some fiberglass tape. And we'll come back in a minute, put a coat of drywall mud over that, but let's talk about the next technique first. The next technique is similar, but it's going to use a piece of wood behind it to hold it in place. And rather than tape the perimeter, we're going to do what's called a blowout patch. Now, a blowout patch uses the face paper to cover that gap. So basically, you're going to take your piece that's plenty big enough to cover the hole, and using the knife, we're going to make a couple of cuts. Just one or two, just enough to snap it back. Now what we're trying to do is leave the paper in place. So we are going to peel the gypsum off of the paper like so. We're going to make additional cuts to do that all the way around. This is an old-timer's trick. Those young guys and their fangled little clips and their little metal patches, we didn't do it like that when we were kids. We did a blowout patch by just cutting it like this. So I don't know if a blowout patch was good enough for us. I'm not sure why it's not good enough for everybody. Well, it is. Works great. Now, this is the size of the hole I need, right? So what I'm going to do is, using my Sharpie, I'm going to gently hold the paper back out of the way while centering it over the hole so that I can make a cutout mark for this one. And it's okay if your mark is a little crazy or erratic or goes a little long, because it's going to be covered anyways. Set the patch aside, put my Sharpie back in my Sharpie pocket, and then we're going to make the cut here. Same principle. I want to double check for electrical. Make sure there's nothing right in the area we're working in. Like a surgeon. We're going to get this sucker cut out. Come on, baby. Now, once that's out of the way, you could obviously use clips and cut the paper off if you didn't have clips. If the patch is small enough, you may not need any additional support, but in case you do, I thought we would show that real quick. This piece is a little on the large side, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to install this piece just with some screws back behind it. We'll do it like that, so that we've got a place for the screws to mount. Okay? So the easiest thing to do in that case is to set one screw in the middle of the piece. That's going to give me something I can hold to get additional screws in. Now, moving back over here, I'm just going to kind of roughly get a screw in like that so that I can get to it easily. This is going to be tricky. This is where the screw comes in. I'm just going to hold it in place while setting this other screw. There it is, real slight dimple. Wow, that came out all right. And now I'll use that same screw to hold it in place while I put a screw in the other side as well.